Vivarium is a movie about a couple who are looking to buy a house. They go into a shop for a cul-de-sac that is being built, and decide to look at one of the houses, and that's when things get weird. It got an R rating, and I'm going to talk about why. Vivarium is a psychological thriller, so it has a lot of disturbing content in it, and just a really unsettling vibe to the whole movie. Nothing really happens in the first act, except we're introduced to two main characters, Tom and Gemma. They are looking for a house, and they go into a shop for a cul-de-sac that's being built, and are greeted by a worker there named Martin. He takes them to the place and is showing them around the house. His entire demeanor is really strange, and he acts really weird. And then when they go into the backyard, he just randomly leaves, and they can't find him. And when they try to leave, all they do is just circle the area and keep coming back to this house. What they should do is just drive straight until they hit the end of the road, and then just make right turns every time they hit the end of the road, and eventually they'd hit the edge. But I guess this place just keeps them in this one area of the cul-de-sac. Eventually their car runs out of gas right in front of the house they looked at, so they go inside and sleep there for the night. This is where things start getting really weird. So the next day they decide they're going to walk their way out and just walk in a straight line. No matter what's in their way, they're just going to go over it. So it can be kind of disturbing or distressing watching them try to find their way out, but they can't. So they're walking all day, and they somehow get back to the house that they were originally in. There's a box outside, and Tom decides to use it to burn the house down. So they fall asleep outside, and they wake up the next day. The house is back, but there's another box, and when they open it, there's a baby inside. They decide to take care of this baby, and they keep getting boxes of food and supplies. So they jump about 90 days into the future, and this kid is half grown. And this is where the disturbing content really ramps up, because this kid might be the creepiest kid I've ever seen. So he learns by basically just repeating what the parents do. So he'll hear them say something, and then he'll just repeat it in their voice.
Sorry, Jam, it's just this place is making me crazy.
And he'll just keep doing that over and over. I don't know how these people survived almost 100 days with this kid in the house. It's like they completely missed the idea that they can just find a way to get away from this kid, or keep the kid away from them so they don't have to deal with it. Because it's obvious that this kid is not a person, it's something else. And the first instance of any kind of rude gestures, it shows that they hold resentment against him, because they wake up and he's always in their room, and they just flip him off, and he flips them off back, and that's kind of how they start the day. Which, no wonder they don't like this kid, because every time he wants something, he just screams as loud as possible and doesn't stop until they give him what he wants. Kind of like some people on the internet. And the creepy thing is, this isn't even the worst thing this kid does. Another kind of disturbing thing this kid does is that he watches the TV, but the TV is just this seemingly random pattern with random noises. So after a while, their resentment for this kid really ramps up, especially Tom. Like, they start becoming almost violent towards him. He keeps calling them mom and dad, and they keep saying that they're not his parents. But he just smiles and shrugs everything they do and say off. And his entire demeanor is really creepy. There's a scene where Tom is smoking a cigarette and flicks the cigarette at the kid, and it just bounces off him and burns a patch of the grass. And Tom notices that the ground isn't normal ground, so this starts this whole digging thing where he just digs all day and sleeps in the hole. and he gets so obsessed that it gets pretty disturbing. Meanwhile, Gemma starts acting like she's this kid's mom and starts taking care of him and defending him against Tom. There's a scene where the kid is screaming for his cereal, so she gets him cereal, and Tom just throws it against the wall, picks him up, and takes him out to their car and locks him in there. So he just sits in the car screaming, and Tom tells Gemma that they're just going to leave him there. If the people who are doing this to them really want the kid to live, then they'll come get him. Which, I gotta say, I kind of agree with Tom on this one, because there is something seriously wrong with whatever this kid is. But Gemma goes out to the car after a fight and gets him out. The next scene that has just a little bit of violence in it is Tom and Gemma are dancing to some music, and the kid joins in, and I'm not sure if it's on purpose or accident, trips Tom. So he falls to the ground and gets mad, and picks this kid up and just slams him down on the street, and walks back into the house. So this kid is perfectly fine, pops up, and just starts dancing again, like nothing happened. But Gemma still doesn't fully understand there's something wrong with this kid, because this isn't even the creepiest thing he does. So this really ramps up the whole Tom sleeping in his hole and Gemma taking care of the kid, but then the kid disappears for a whole day. Gemma's looking for him, Tom doesn't care, and towards the end of the day, the kid just randomly shows up at the house again. Gemma asks the kid where he went, but he won't tell her, so she decides to try to trick him into telling her. And this might be the worst mistake she's ever made, because she asks him to do his impressions, which he does, and then she asks him to do an impression of whoever he met that day. And wow, was that a mistake. Because this kid does a far more disturbing thing than I ever expected from this movie. And Gemma freaks out, and she completely 180s back to she's not his mother. After this, not too many disturbing things happen. Tom is getting sick, probably from whatever he's digging into. The last time Tom digs, he finds someone's body. It doesn't show the body, it just kind of shows the outline of its face. So it's not too disturbing, but it's a little distressing. By the time he dies, the boy has grown up. The day Tom dies, he comes back with a body bag, puts Tom in the body bag, and just dumps him into the hole that he dug. Which brings up the question, were there previous people they trapped in here? And does everyone who gets trapped in here end up digging a hole? Because if they're relying on that, that's kind of a specific thing that has to happen every time. There's another small scene of violence after this. Emma is waiting in the car for the kid to leave, and once he leaves, she hits him with a pickaxe, and it just doesn't even faze him, except he does this creepy hissing thing and just crawls into the ground. So Emma goes after him, and there's this really psychological scene of her falling into other houses that people are trapped in, and eventually back to her own house. Once Gemma dies, the boy then dumps her body into that same hole and fills the hole. He then goes back to the shop where Tom and Gemma were originally looking at the house, and the guy they were talking to dies. So the boy puts him in a body bag, and he rolls up the body, and you can hear what's happening to the guy's body, and it's pretty disturbing. And then sits in the chair and waits for the next couple to show up to start the process again. There's some sexual content in this, like there's a couple scenes where it shows people having intercourse, and both times one of the creepy kids are watching. But other than that, there's no sexual content, but what is there is pretty graphic. There's a bit of language in this movie. There's probably about 15 F words said throughout the movie, and a few lesser curse words, but the F word is the most prominent, including one use of mother effer. Like I said, the entire tone and theme of this movie is really disturbing. I feel like it would be enough for a PG-13 rating for disturbing content, or maybe even terror, but not an R. There's enough language and sexual content, though, to push it to an R. So I agree with the MPAA that this movie should be rated R for language and some sexuality and nudity. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, so YouTube can start noticing my channel. If you want to see more videos on movies and why they got an MPAA rating, subscribe to my channel. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at MovieMortalYT. Thanks for watching.